If you ever driven across the state line into Ohio, you may have noticed, maybe joked or complained about the striking difference when it comes to the quality of the road.
And even though the Motor City is home to the first paved roadway in the nation, more than a century later, Michigan's road care and conditions rank basically at the bottom. You've likely heard the excuses. Tonight, when you take a road trip with us to Ohio's road testing lab, you'll learn the real reasons why we can't fix the damn roads. Can you tell the difference?
Yeah, the roads are bad. They're bad.
Brian Heaton lives in Michigan, a Hail Mary pass from the Ohio border. As a custom builder, he caters to many customers in the Buckeye State, a place admired not so much for its college football team, but certainly for its smooth highways. In fact, after doing a job there, Heaton says driving home feels like trying to navigate a gravelly bombed minefield.
Probably do a better job.
If Heaton's boast has merit, why haven't decades of governors and lawmakers ever been able to fix our roads?
They want us to fix the damn roads.
Republicans and Democrats have promised.
We're fixing the roads, and we're fixing them now.
When visitors come here, we don't want them to have to put on a helmet and feel like they have to drive in a Humvee to be safe going down our freeways.
It's roughly $1 billion to $1.2 billion a year of an additional investment we need to make.
Fill that sucker!
More than 4 decades of political campaign promises that are now as broken as our state's roadways.
Going to the tire shop at least once every other month.
Costs money.
Yeah, it costs me money. Plenty of money.
Keeping businesses like Warlock Tire in Detroit serving customers now for more than 80 years. Manager Steve Baydoun says the only thing that's changed, it now costs more to fix our damaged cars.
The average person is paying, anywhere $2,000 to $3,000 a year for tires, wheels.
We don't have to tell you how Michigan roads compare to Ohio's because you can feel it. And when you cross the state line, it's as smooth as driving on polished marble. The noisy rattle disappears. Even more noticeable from our drone's eye. Look at the contrast in color at the dividing borderline. Why the drastic difference? Ohio's Department of Transportation maintains a huge network, nearly 50,000 lane miles of roadway, compared to MDOT, which is only responsible for about half of that, around 28,000 lane miles. I decided to take a road trip to Ohio to find out what we are doing wrong. There's a difference. We can see it. We put a drone up.
There is a difference. We do see some different aspects.
Dan Miller, who manages Ohio's road materials, is the person who provides contractors with the so-called recipes for the roads. It's like baking a cake, and inside ODOT's testing labs, engineers mix combinations of road ingredients that end up looking like this. That's what Michigan's problem is right now, is that this isn't lasting.
So in our base area, we're using a larger coarse aggregate, and that larger coarse aggregate is going to be able to take that heavier load and transfer that load down into the base material and allow for the vehicles to travel.
On top of that, Ohio mostly uses an asphalt mix on their highways. Engineers discover it is quieter to drive and more flexible than concrete, which makes it less prone to cracking under heavy loads or extreme temperatures. Meanwhile, Michigan constructed many of its highways using concrete to accommodate truck traffic. Even though concrete costs more, it was said to last longer. But that wasn't the case, and Miller can see the difference now in Michigan.
You do see some potholes for concrete pavement. You see different things. You have faulting, you have curling and warping that cause issues where you're riding along, you're kind of bouncing along on a concrete pavement.
Miller points to the testing labs as a major contributor to Ohio's road success. Once the hired road contractors submit what they plan to pour, engineers put the materials in the asphalt mixes through rigorous testing. Well, once this layer of roadway is compressed and then cooled down, they take it to be tested. First, an air void test, and then you'll need to find out if it can withstand the freeze-thaw cycle and the pressure of the vehicles driving across. To make sure this doesn't turn into this, they have to do a test that's equivalent to a freeze-thaw cycle. So what they do is put the actual sample into a water bath, they heat it up to about 140 degrees, then they cool it down, and then do the pressure test.
See where all the asphalt, you kind of see the aggregate stone is stripped away. So this one would have failed the TSR, we call it tensile strength ratio test.
So it's back to the drawing board?
So yes.
Testing before concrete is laid. Even its support, rebar.
120.
But Michigan's Department of Transportation may not be testing enough. In 2022, the state's Auditor General released a report that revealed MDOT didn't meet the requirements to test the aggregate used to repair and build highways. It also didn't properly inspect the labs of the gravel suppliers and ensure the quality of the aggregate supplier. All of this dating back to 2018. In 2023, the state's Auditor General reported MDOT didn't complete road contractor and consultant performance evaluations, another state requirement to ensure quality road construction.
MDOT has responded to those reports by saying it has since corrected the problem and that quality was never impacted, placing the blame on other factors. But why, when we compare our roads to places like Ohio, there always seems to be some sort of excuse?
Sometimes we hear people say, well, they have a toll road. That's why they have good roads. But you really just have one that goes east to west.
And it's a completely separate entity. So the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission runs the Ohio Turnpike. It's a completely separate entity. We don't get their money. Or their funding that goes right into the turnpike.
In fact, ODOT's frontman says Ohio's roads are almost fully funded by the gas tax. Did you know Michigan's sales tax on our gas doesn't even go to our roads? In Michigan, crews constantly patch cracks and road holes, mainly blamed on freeze-thaw cycles during brutal winter months. But did you know who has it even worse?
Ohio generally has more.
Which means Ohio's roads should be in worse condition. Climatologist and MSU professor Jeffrey Anderson has been collecting data and studying the influence of temperature and weather patterns for decades. Turns out numbers show over the last 30 years, Ohio has had more freeze-thaw cycles than Michigan. But in just the last few years, Michigan has had about the same or a few more.
But in roads and maintaining roads, and especially road condition, it's a big one. The more, of course, of these cycles that we have back and forth, the more pressure the surface is under with maintaining itself.
And even though this year Michigan had the warmest winter on record, he says both states experienced a lot more moisture.
It also, of course, has to do with water and the fact that when we have these freeze thaws, liquid turns into ice and it takes up more volume and, of course, can cause further deterioration or further cracks or larger crevices than were there before. And it's just sort of a destructive process over time.
Heavy truck loads can also destroy roads over time. That's why there are weight limits in both Michigan and Ohio, which are considered key logistic hubs. In Michigan, trucks can carry more weight, but have restrictions on the number of axles and spacing to distribute weight. It is a bit stricter in Ohio. They pay more to haul more.
It's about making sure that the resource that's sent to us via the taxpayer, they get the best value for that dollar.
While EV owners bypass the gas pump, they have to pay higher registration fees, so they still chip in for the roads we all rely on. On top of registration fees, Michigan EV owners pay around $235. Ohio a little less at $200. But is it making a difference? Michigan's crumbling roads are an age-old problem. Back to Brian Heaton, our Michigan border resident, who may be onto something.
The materials they use, like this driveway, we build it up with 2.5 foot of compacted stone. They don't do it right.
And I've been working on this piece for months and really wanted to sit down with our most current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, about what she thinks it will finally take to fix our roads once and for all. I reached out to her spokesperson, Robert Letty, 4 times beginning back in April, but was never granted that interview. And even though our roads are not political, for some reason in Michigan they seem to be. So you have to make sure to catch part 2 of my report tomorrow night at 10 p.m. I found out why it is so hard to get road funding in our state compared to others, and what MDOT has been forced to do instead to get by, and why something, Rube, called road dieting is being considered.
Road dieting?
Road dieting.
Fascinating. And you have some rebar here.
Rebar, yeah. This is one of the things, one of my, I guess you could call my souvenir from the testing labs.
Right.
And that's why we need more money to also improve our testing labs. There's a lot to this, and you won't want to miss it. You'll be surprised some of the things that we were able to reveal.